Hello and welcome to Tech is for Everyone, the podcast series that deep dives into tech professionals' journeys using their experience to get you the best hints and tips to break into the world of tech. Just starting your career or looking to sidestep into a new industry or wanting to climb through the ranks, tune in and get ready to be inspired. On this episode I'm joined by Tom Ford, Senior Product Manager at xDesign. Tom and I explore his route into a product role, how Game Boy has influenced his tech career, why you should be curious, and how to say no. We hope you enjoy listening.
Cool. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Good. No, we'll talk through a few questions. Hopefully the listeners, if there are any, find it useful. So I've got a few stock questions, a few non-stock. Obviously the theme is tech is for everyone.
Yeah.
With the idea being that we learn more about your role, how you go into tech, and hopefully a couple of takeaways for people looking to venture into your area. So I want to start with the question I'm going to ask everyone on the podcast, which is, what does technology mean to you?
Okay, so I think when I was a kid, technology to me was my Game Boy Color or my PlayStation. And, as you grow up a little bit more, it turns into computers, laptops and things you use in school and in lessons and so on. So very hardware-based, I would say.
Yeah.
And when you actually get into tech and you start working in tech, you realise that actually tech is both, it's hardware and it's software as well.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's more software than anything else. So it's servers and it's databases and it's apps on your phone, enterprise software that companies use to place orders and speak to another company and so on. Really now, my view is that tech is everything. Yeah. Almost everything we interact with on a daily basis has some form of tech behind it, whether that is software that's running it, whether it's a piece of hardware like your phone or laptop. So yeah, for me, tech is everything nowadays.
I know you said Game Boy Color, just not Game Boy Black and White.
No, I got a Game Boy Color. I still remember the day I got it. It was maybe my 12th birthday, and I was down in London. I opened it. I was so excited. Yeah. The first game was Pokemon Blue. Was my game of choice on it.
Yeah,
so hours and hours on that thing.
I reckon I had probably one of the last grey screen, black and grey screen Game Boys. I'm struggling to remember the games that they had now. It was almost like a Tetris-esque sort of Game Boys.
Well, even before Game Boys, I remember every Christmas my grandma used to put the Argos catalogue in front of me and say, pick something, pick what you want for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I'd always flick through to the kind of game section. It was never Game Boy Colors. It was like this huge block of plastic with a tiny little screen in it and some buttons, and it had one game on it.
Yeah.
And the game might be Tetris, it might be a motorbike racing on a road, you dodge the cars as they're coming down the screen, but it was this huge thing, bigger than a smartphone.
Yeah.
And you get one game and it was kind of just analog left and right, go at it. And that was tech back then, right?
Kept you entertained for hours on end as well. It wasn't a case of, I've played this game for an hour now, I need to load something else.
No, which of course nowadays, I think, I won't say kids, but I think everyone's attention spans are way shorter nowadays. Our pockets, and we just flick between apps, we scroll through videos and struggle to pay attention to a lot of things.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, back in the day, it's like, disc out, disc in, wait for it to load, everything else. Now I've got 10 games that are all a million times better than that one was on my phone that I can access in seconds, which is just crazy. But I was going to say, not that I have time to play games anymore. That's a distant memory as well. So you didn't fancy being a games developer? You've gone into the world of product?
Yeah, I went into the world of product. I have dabbled in games development, but not in a professional capacity. So I've done some personal work where I've had a play with it, done a few things in Unity and so on, but it's not for me. I think to be a solo games developer, you've got to be good at lots of different things. You've got to be able to write the code, you've got to be able to design the assets, do all the animations and things like that. Admiration for anyone who is a full stack indie game developer.
Yeah.
But no, I'm in the world of product. I'm a product manager. I've been doing this for about 8 years now. I've been in my career, so to speak, for probably about 10 now. But I didn't always think I was going to be a product manager. It's one of those things where you just take opportunities and they end up leading you towards that role. So when I was a kid, doing my GCSEs and A-levels, I always thought I wanted to be in business.
Right.
And completely undefined what business meant at that point. It probably meant actually owning a business or running a business, something like that. I did go to university, so I studied business at A-level, went on to university, was looking for a business course to take and found business and marketing.
Right.
So of course, spent 3 years mainly studying marketing. And at that point, I thought, I'm going to be in marketing. working, advertising, selling things, speaking to customers and learning what makes them tick. Yeah. It's quite interesting because actually there's loads of parallels between marketing and product management. Right. It's all about what do customers want, what are their behaviours, what's the psychology behind what they're doing and what they're buying and so on. So and that's all stuff that we care about in product management as well. So I studied business and marketing at university. I ended up, out of chance more than anything, in a tech role with H as a project manager, and that's after failing to find a graduate job in marketing.
Right, okay.
I had a friend of mine who said to me, listen, I'm getting paid good money here. It's a decent grad scheme. You get to rotate around all these different areas. Why don't you come try this? And fortunately, I got in. And I learned loads there. It was my first exposure to working in tech. I spent time on a bunch of different accounts for HP. So I worked with Procter & Gamble. I worked with the Department for Work and Pensions. I worked with Deutsche Bank down in London quite a bit. So got exposed to lots of big household names. I got to do lots of travel up and down the country and stuff. I think that really opened my eyes to the world of tech, and that's when I was hooked at that point. And eventually I moved on from HP after the grad scheme to a small company in Newcastle called Hedgehog Lab. They're very focused on app and website development. They're a small agency, or getting bigger, I should say. I don't want to do them a disservice. They were a small agency. They were a little bit bigger than they used to be nowadays. But I moved there as a project manager, so still not in the world of product. I remember we went through a bit of a transition as a company. We brought in a new chief product officer, a chap called Aidan. He's a really, really nice guy. And he transitioned the company from this project-led organisation into a product-led organisation. And the message for project managers at the time was basically either retrain or, unfortunately, you probably need to move on.
Right, okay.
Not in a negative way, but the option was there to retrain, and I took it. And I've never looked back. Yeah. Been a product manager ever since.
Yeah. It's an interesting transition, isn't it? I guess from projects to products, and I guess are the similar things in the way that you approach sort of aspects of the product or projects that you've learned on experience that you've gained, or is it completely like ripping up the rule book and, like you say, retraining almost?
Yeah, there's definitely skills across both of those roles. I mean, planning is a key one of project management, and it's something that we do in product management as well. We spend a lot of time strategizing and planning and thinking about the future and trying to build the right thing in the future. So definitely planning is a big one. The communication side of project management as well stands you in really good stead to be a product manager as well, because half of our job is talking to people. Yeah. Whether that's customers, whether if you work in an agency like me, that's clients. Yeah. We spend all day speaking to people. Our teams as well. So you've got to be a good communicator, and that if you are a good project manager, you are probably a good communicator as well. So, and then the other side of it is just being organised. So project managers are dealing with lots of different things at once. They're trying to keep tabs on things, organising work and budgets and all these kind of things. So it's handling that amount of different plates that you're spinning at once. We do that in product management as well. You are often doing research, interviewing customers, liaising with your development team, all these things at the same time. So yeah, definitely a transferable skill from being a project manager to being a product manager as well.
Is there anything about your job now that you didn't expect?
I think when I first became a product manager, I wasn't expecting quite so much ambiguity in my job. And that's both in the development of new products and trying to figure out what to develop and why we're developing it. And then also just in like day-to-day aspects of the job as well, especially being in a digital agency. I don't work on one product. I work for a client, so they have a product and I might spend 6 months there and then move on and spend a year somewhere else. So I'm always moving around in that sense. So you're exposed to lots of different industries and clients and so on. Yeah. But then also in my day-to-day, I don't just work on projects for clients. So the last few weeks, for example, I'm delivering a vision and mission and objective session for our delivery team internally. I've spoken at a couple of events recently outside of work. I am interviewing people to make sure that they are good value fits for our company. So not just product managers, but software engineers and so on as well. So you get exposed to loads of different things, and that's a level of ambiguity in your job role, I think. Yeah, when you read a job description, it doesn't tell you that you'll do all of those things, but naturally you're a good communicator, you're exposed to lots of people in the company, so you end up getting involved in those things. Yeah. And then on the product side as well, there's loads of ambiguity. We go into a new engagement with a client not knowing anything about their business, not knowing anything about their customers, their existing tech stack, their existing products. We've got to figure all of that out very, very quickly, become an expert in that. And then there's the ambiguity about how you're actually going to do that as well. There's hundreds of frameworks out there, templates out there, product management influencers who are talking about different ways of doing things, and this is the only way you should do it, and so on. So there's just that level of ambiguity about, okay, we're here right now, we know we need to get to this point over here, but the journey to get there is just a big blank page. And we've got to figure out every day, what am I going to do that's going to get me there?
Yeah. You don't fancy yourself as one of these influencers then?
No, it's not for me.
It's
not for me, I'm afraid. I mean, I like doing things like this, and I like speaking at events sometimes, but I am not a LinkedIn product manager or a Medium product manager. I've got ex-colleagues from different companies who are actually, and they've got quite a good following and socials and stuff like that. But not for me.
So we're not looking out for the book just yet?
No, there'll be no book. Certainly not yet. Maybe when I'm a bit older and I'm running out of things to do.
A few more things.
Got some free time, and maybe I'll write the book then. But not anytime soon.
Right, I'll keep looking at it in 5 or 10 years. What's a common myth then about the role of a product manager?
Okay, my opinion on the biggest myth about product management is the quote, and I'm not sure if this is a Marty Kagan quote. If you don't know Marty Kagan, people call him the godfather of product management. He is the guy who's wrote a bunch of books.
Right, okay.
In a way, he's a social media product manager, but he's very looked up to within the product world. Yeah. And I think it was Marty Kagan that said that the product manager is the CEO of the product, so the chief executive officer of the product. And I hate that. I really, really hate it. So when you think about a CEO, who is that person? Right? It's someone who has power. It's someone who has authority, who can make big decisions, who's ultimately a leader within the company. Product managers have zero authority. We can make decisions, but more often than not, we're trying to influence others to make decisions or to make the decisions that we want them to make. So we do lead. Part of our job is leading, whether that's motivating teams, influencing other people, bringing them around to our point of view, but we have no authority. We lead without authority. And for me, that's why when people say a PM is the CEO of the product, I don't agree with it at all.
I've not heard that. Obviously I've not read the book, but
it's a good book.
Interesting take.
Marty Kagan's book is called Inspired. It's like a classic PM read. So if anyone is wanting to learn more about product management or even get into it, you've got to read Inspired. It's the one to read. So.
Top tip.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you weren't in the world of products then, what other tech job would you have done or would you go into?
I'd be a developer. I have dabbled in development in my free time. As I mentioned before, I spent some time in Unity just playing around with games.
Yeah.
But I've also done a lot of Android development as well. Right. So I started in Java 5 or 6 years ago, moved on to Kotlin when that became the latest language to use for Android. And nowadays I'm dabbling and starting to learn Compose as well, which is the latest Android language. I have my own Android app released on the app stores too, which is I guess you'd call it a tech for good app that helps people who've lost their voice to speak again.
Amazing.
And it does really well. It's got 300,000 downloads. It's got 50,000 monthly active users. I make no money from it really. It's just a little passion project, in honesty.
Yeah.
But I love Android development, and it's the one area of development that I feel like I've got a really good understanding of. And if I wanted to change careers, I could probably go in as a junior to mid-level Android developer. So if I wasn't a PM, or if at some point in the future the PM life gets too stressful for me and I'm losing too many hairs or going too grey, then maybe I'll think about becoming a developer instead. Yeah. I'm sure there's lots of developers out there who look at that and go, "No, don't. You'll lose even more hair.
You'll end up like me."
But that's the backup plan. Maybe an Android developer.
Yeah, that's amazing. To be fair, 300,000 downloads.
It's gone crazy.
It's pretty good going for just a project of passion.
It's done lots more than I ever thought it would do. I'm super proud of it. Don't talk about it much because I don't want to say I'm proud of it.
Get it everywhere. It's not brag, is it? It's a good thing, especially the type of app that it is for the benefits that it could make to other people. Yeah,
it's an interesting thing. I won't labour on it too much, but it's a little interesting product nugget for people here is that I built that app because my mother lost her voice and she had an Android phone and we couldn't find the right app for her. None of them were quite right, similar ones that existed.
Yeah.
So it was purely really for people who have lost lost their voice.
Yeah.
And actually what I'm finding is that people are using it for all sorts of different reasons. So it's not just people who've lost their voice, although there are plenty of those, but people are using it to create voiceovers for YouTube videos or for TikTok videos or to prank their mates or whatever it is. So interesting that the market that I built it for, whilst that does definitely exist, there's also a massive opportunity with other markets as well.
Tech for good and tech for prank.
Tech for good and tech for YouTube.
Well, it's got a market, definitely, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. So what's the most important lesson you've learned over your career so far?
Building relationships, maintaining relationships, not burning bridges in relationships are everything. I know hundreds of thousands of people in the UK work in tech, but it's still a small world.
Yeah.
Especially if you work agencies, for example, as opposed to big product companies, you'd be very surprised how many of the CEOs or owners or founders of agencies know each other, speak to each other regularly, helping each other out here and there as well. So it's a small world, and having good relationships with people is absolutely everything. And I'd also say on that front that what makes you an interesting person and someone that people want to talk to and want to build a relationship with is not necessarily what you are doing at work. It's not performing well at work. It's not your day-to-day job and telling people about that. It's often the stuff outside of work that is most important, and that means you're going to build good relationships with people. I'd also say to never stop doing things. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but sometimes in your career you come across periods of downtime. Maybe you're between projects, maybe you're between jobs, for whatever reason it might be. And I'm not saying run at 110% all the time, but if you let yourself drop down to 60% and you stop learning and you stop reading and you stop interacting with people, it's really hard to get going again. And I've made that mistake. I've had periods where it's been quiet between projects and I've chilled out for a few months. And I've been told to chill out. I've not been doing anything wrong to it, but it's really hard to get going again and to get back into the mindset of working and being busy and so on. So I'd say never stop doing. And then just a final one, the honest truth is if you want to make big jumps in salary, you've got to change jobs. And it's not something that everyone likes to hear, but you will go up in salary much quicker if you are going to spend a couple of years somewhere, build a name for yourself, do good work, and then move on. Loyalty is a nice thing to have, but it's not really worth anything in the tech industry anymore, I don't think, personally.
There's no such thing as a job for life anymore, is there? It's not like my old man, I think at 18, he went to work at an accountancy firm and he retired at that firm.
Never left.
He retired at that firm at 64 or whatever age he was. So I think the average lifespan now is about 2 to 3 years, I reckon.
I'd say so.
Something like that.
I tell you what, though, there's no such thing as a job for life, but a lot of the relationships that you build at jobs will last for a long time in your career. So again, just stressing the importance of good relationships. And you can leave a job on good terms and have a good relationship with people. And hopefully you've got a good leader in your company that will support you to do that as well when the time comes.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree. So in your opinion then, what's the most sort of important trait of someone looking to get into product?
Well, let's continue on the same theme then. I'll go with two things, but the first one then will be relationship building. Everything that we do as product managers is based on relationships, and you can do it with bad relationships, but it's a hell of a lot easier to do it if you have good relationships with people. Just thinking about what we said earlier about leading and influencing without authority, it's much easier to influence someone if you have a good relationship with them. And also it's important to think about your relationships as well. So to understand, if you're working with a client or you're speaking to a customer or someone in your engineering team, what does that person fear? What does that person feel motivated by? How can you make sure that you don't talk about things that they fear? Or how can you talk about those things that they fear and address those and try and turn them into things which aren't fears anymore? And thinking about motivations as well. How can you make that person look good, especially in front of their colleagues and their peers or their manager? If you can do those things, they're going to like you and they're going to want to do something for you. So relationship building is definitely a key thing that you need to be able to do as a product manager. And then the other one I'd say is curiosity. So we spend a lot of time asking why. And you hear people talk about the 5 whys and things like this. But honestly, we just ask why all the time. We want to understand why we're doing this thing, what impact it's going to have, why is it going to have that impact, and so on, so on, so on. So you've got to be curious to be a PM. You've got to want to look at the data behind something. You've got to be willing to challenge a customer and say, well, and not just take them at their word and say, well, why is that? Can you explain to me your motivation behind that? Because when you understand those things, that's when you can build really good products.
So my 3-year-old basically.
Yes, absolutely.
Why?
Absolutely.
And that's one more why at the end.
100%.
Yeah, I'll prefer that to him as a choice then for career.
Yeah,
see what
make
it
a
makes
good PM.
You probably ask me why. So nice and easy one then. So what's your favourite productivity hack?
No, it's not an easy one for me.
No.
It's not an easy one. So I don't have many productivity hacks, I would say. But the main thing that jumps to mind is learning how to say no.
Right.
So as PMs, we find ourselves pulled into meetings left, right, and centre. Very, very quickly, your day can become 5 hours of meetings.
Right.
And actually, as PMs, what you need is some thinking time as well.
Yeah.
You don't always do your work in a meeting. You do some of your work where you're on your own or with your team and you're thinking. So you need to take control of your diary and say no to people and say, no, sorry, I can't attend that meeting. So learning how to do that is probably the best productivity hack I can recommend for people. And it's dead easy. Like someone puts a meeting in your diary, they don't put an agenda in it, you don't understand why you should be there. All you've got to do is send them a message and say, hi, what value am I bringing to this meeting? Do I need to be there? Can I address that over Slack or Teams or whatever it is right now? And that also applies to requests from stakeholders as well. So sometimes we work for clients, sometimes clients come to us with frankly ridiculous requests, and we've got to learn how to say no to them in a way that is not going to make them feel threatened. And it makes them feel heard, it makes them understand why we're saying no, and so on. So no to calendar invites, take control of your calendar, make sure you've got time to think, and then no to stakeholders as well. And then the final thing about saying no is actually to do with negotiations. So there's a really great book on negotiations by a guy called Chris Voss. The book is called Never Split the Difference. And he suggests that if you can get to the point of no in a negotiation, then that is fantastic, because that's when the real negotiations can start. When you get to no, when your counterparty in a negotiation says no, they will then generally elaborate on why that's a no and what they really want. And at that point is when you can really start actually negotiating. So I definitely recommend reading that book. It's really useful to read as a product manager as well. So 3 no's. Basically.
3 no's. So what's the most important tool in your job as a PM?
I think the tool that I use most day to day, and honestly do 60+% of my PM work in, is probably a tool called Miro. For those that don't know, Miro is an online whiteboarding tool. You can do all sorts on there. You can draw pretty shapes. You can use sticky notes. You can everything that you could do on a whiteboard, you can do in Miro, but it's online. And it's in your browser, where you have an app on your laptop that allows you to do it. And of course, you can collaborate with your colleagues on there as well. So they can be in the same Miro board as you. They can be dragging things around, typing things, importing pictures, moving things, etc. So I use Miro almost every single day. We are a remote-first company at xDesign, so a large number of the people who work at xDesign work remotely. We do have 2 core offices in Edinburgh and in Leeds, and a couple of others opening in Manchester and possibly other places throughout the year, but largely we're remote. So it's super important to have a space, particularly for product managers, for designers as well, where you can get together, you can collaborate virtually, essentially. And for us, that is Miro, and I would be lost without it. But there are alternatives to Miro. I think you can use FigJam as well. So there's a design tool called Figma, where, again, a lot of our designers do their design work in there. They've got a whiteboarding piece of software as well, and it's called FigJam, so very similar to Miro. And there's others as well. I think there's things like Mural, a couple of others too. Miro's definitely my favourite, definitely our favourite at xDesign as well. It's got loads of templates in there too. So, as a product manager, you might want to run a particular type of activity, not have a board set up ready to do that. You can go look for a template. Someone's probably done it before. Drop that in, ready to go. You don't have to spend hours drawing boxes on a whiteboard or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's super handy for that. And they're quite at the cutting edge of things in terms of AI as well. They're bringing in lots of AI tools recently to help you out as well. So yeah, definitely good to check out.
Nice. So if you were to give one piece of advice to someone starting out in a career as a product manager, what would it be?
I think I would say you don't need to know everything. It's super overwhelming when you start looking into PM work and you start maybe reading books like Marty Kagan's Inspired or following prominent product managers on LinkedIn or other social media or whatever. And they're always talking about this crazy thing you've never heard of, or this particular framework, or this way of doing thing, or this really detailed metric or piece of analytical work that they've done. And you just think, oh, wow, like I've got so much to learn. Yeah. And it can be super, super overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. You do not need to know a junior PM, even as a senior PM or principal PM. You don't need to know every single activity that you could possibly do to get to a certain outcome. You don't need to know every template. You don't need to be able to rattle off every single possible testing method or anything like that.
Yeah.
You just need to be able to have good conversations, and you need to remember that everything is ultimately just a conversation. You need to stay curious. You need to always ask why. You need to be honest with yourself as well and think about when are you making assumptions, and just be really honest with yourself and make sure you go away and test those assumptions rather than just allowing your biases to come through.
Yeah.
And then finally, I'd say just always look for data to back up the decisions that you want to make. So if you're going to make a decision, find some data that supports what you're doing as well. But don't get overwhelmed by the plethora of frameworks, methodologies, and everything else that gets thrown around in the product world. Yeah,
nice. The old school data recruiter of old in me loves that answer as well. Yeah, it's all about the data.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, what's the one question you wished that I'd asked, and how would you have answered?
I guess you haven't asked me if I enjoy my job,
right?
And I'd say yes. Yeah. Fortunately, I do. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be doing it if I didn't enjoy it. Sometimes it is full on and it's stressful. You're working very hard to short timelines and so on. So, fortunately, I do enjoy my job. There's aspects of it that I don't enjoy so much. You feel very responsible as a PM. Ultimately, you are either for a client or for your company. You are trying to make decisions on the products that they build or the features that they build for a certain product. You are suggesting to the company that if we do things a certain way, we're going to see this impact, whether that's more users, more revenue, more people converting, whatever it might be. So it feels like there's a lot of responsibility on you. And that's one of my least favourite aspects of the job, I would say.
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned before, there's a lot of ambiguity in the day-to-day. 1 minute we can be interviewing potential users, the next minute we're in a scoping session with the engineering team, the next minute we're working on strategy, and we've got an eye 6 months in the future. So you move around a lot.
Yeah.
I like that aspect of the job, but I also dislike it as well. You don't get to focus on one thing necessarily as well. And probably one of the other things I dislike is the lack of authority. You are always trying to get things done without being the person that can tell someone to do that thing. So definitely you are fighting that a lot of the time. But there's loads and loads of good aspects of being a PM as well. If you do agency work like I do, you get exposed to so many different people, so many different industries, so many different types of work. So just some examples, I've worked with footballers, I've worked with a prince from the Middle East as well, I've worked with all these kind of crazy people, and then much more normal people as well, just entrepreneurs, people who are running businesses, people who work at larger businesses and so on. So you meet loads of different people. I've worked across loads of different industries, lots of financial services work, travel and tourism, education, just loads and loads and loads of different industries. And then I've worked on loads of different things as well. I've built mobile apps, I've built marketing websites, I've worked on SaaS, so software as a service pieces for companies as well. So you just get exposed to loads of different things. So particularly in agency work, that's one of the great things about being a PM. I'd say another fantastic thing about being a PM is that you get exposed to lots of different people within the company. You get the opportunity to interact with lots of different people at the company. So if you're an engineer, for example, maybe your general interactions are probably the rest of your engineering team. You might speak to a QA engineer, you might speak to your product manager occasionally and so on. But generally you're fairly in that bubble. As a PM, you're regularly speaking to CEOs, you're regularly speaking to your engineering team, you're regularly speaking to customers, you go out and do events and you speak to people at events, you do podcasts and you talk to people on podcasts. So I think there's it all comes back to relationship building again, but there's loads of opportunities to speak to loads of different people, whether it's at customers or within your own company. And then finally, I'd just say the range of activities you get involved in. I think I've mentioned events already and podcasts and things like that, but within the company as well, working with other departments to help them figure out their strategy, their direction, and so on. It's just a really broad range of things that you can do as a PM if you want to get involved in them. And again, just comparing that to maybe an engineering role. If you are a Java developer, you're likely to, generally speaking, just be doing Java development.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll do some stuff around the sides as well, but probably not to the same extent that you would do as a PM.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming in.
No worries.
Loads of great insights, and I've taken a lot away.
It's been a pleasure to be on.
Hopefully the listeners have too.
Yeah, I hope so.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, James.
Thank you for listening to Tech is for Everyone. If you're looking to start your career in tech or want to know more about how our academy can help grow and diversify your teams, then find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, or via the Qualcomm Tech Academy website. Links can be found in the description. Look forward to having you join us on the next episode.